Alright, been quite a long time since I've done a video like this. Hell, it's been, I don't know, 6 months. Well, we're using the new Unity here, Unity 2017 as opposed to the, I think it was 2015 that VRChat used to use. So most of everything still works. Nothing seems to be broken ever since I've updated to 2017. But that's besides the point. You all want to know how to animate things on your avatar. So as we see here, most of my videos, how I show you how to do shit is off of Dead by Daylight. So here we have the Dr. Foul Bile cosmetic, and we can see his goofy eyes are moving all over the place. I'm not going to show you how to do this avatar specifically, but I'm going to give you a rundown of pretty much the same way of how it works. Considering I've already done this avatar, we're actually going to be working with the Wraith. I forgot his cosmetic name. I think it's like Angel of Music or some shit like that. So we're going to be using his cosmetic, and what we're going to be animating specifically on that avatar is the heartbeat on his weapon. So we're going to make his heart, the heart on the weapon basically beat using the animation. So a rundown of how this kind of works. We're just going to use the doctor really quick as to how this really works. So the eyes obviously are right here. They're running off of a separate mesh that is connected to the doctor itself. So much like much like the weapon here, as we see, I'll have it hidden, but much like the weapon trigger that we have for him, it's a separate mesh that basically the avatar holds. It's the same thing here, honestly. It's the eyes are a separate mesh, as you can see in here. Here's the mesh, and what I would do is I would the animation is then tied to that mesh specifically, and I would just drag and drop it into the Dr. Filebile. So. And if we click on the eyes, it has an animator here. I'm going to get into more detail of all this, but you get the idea. The whole premise is that you want to keep whatever it is that's animated on that avatar, you want it as a separate mesh. That is the whole premise of why I'm talking to you about this. You do not want it attached to the avatar, or at least the way that I do it personally. This is the only way that I've ever found it to work. Of course, I tell you guys all the time, I'm an amateur. I do shit my own way. Other people have their own professional way of doing it. I don't really know, but this is how I do it. But essentially how it also goes is that I'm very organized. So if we go down to my my Dr. Foul Bile folder, I have here an animation for his eyes to keep moving as they are, and then the animator itself, because we're going to have to use the animator to get it to basically tell it, hey, make these eyes move, kind of thing. Alright, well, there's another thing I probably should mention that I failed to mention in the beginning of the video. So when we're dealing with animations in this video, we're actually talking about Unreal Engine animations, so we're talking about PSA animations. That is the format that Unreal Engine uses in any way. And then the model formats or the meshes use PSK, as you guys have already been familiar with in my previous part videos. So again, apologies for that, but this video is only mainly going to be specifically focusing on Unreal Engine animations. So if you guys, I would assume it's no different if you know how to extract the animations and you know how to tie them into a mesh, say within Blender here. So obviously, if we go into Blender really quick, if it's File, Import, and then obviously the skeletal mesh for Unreal Engine is in a PSK format. Say we have a mesh format, maybe it's in the format of M3D or something. So the mesh format from another video game is M3D, so it would be that extension. And then say maybe the animation extension would be M3A or something like that. So it would probably not work no different. So if we just go into, if we hit import and then import our M3D mesh, and then if we went to file, import our M3A animation on top of it, it would basically import the animation on top of the mesh's skeleton, if that makes sense. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get into this further. So here we have the heart here. We're specifically, or at least in this video, I'm specifically focusing on this mesh. So this mesh obviously animates, it obviously beats. It's got about 4 bones, it looks like here. You may be wanting to make the doctor's eyes from the foul bile that I mentioned. Maybe you want those to animate, or maybe you want to get the asylum head model to animate. You know, the little needles that hit on it or stick out of his head. So anything like that, anything that animates in the game, you basically want to find the mesh for that specific thing. So in this case, again, this is the heart and it animates. So if we go and file open package here, and obviously, as we know, Quick BMS makes a mess out of the folders when we basically rip the actual files from the game. So depending on where that mesh is in UModel, you're going to have to do the work and find it on your own. Sometimes it could be as simple as maybe the mesh will be in the weapons folder, or sometimes it may even be in this folder, the meshes folder, or sometimes it could be in, say, the slashers folder, or it could be in characters, slashers, or characters campers. It very much depends on where the mesh is. So it's a lot of file exploring. For the most part, it keeps it organized, but not as organized as it used to be in version 1.9.4. So, yeah, so the heart mesh is obviously going to be located in weapons, models. If we click on the drop down, it's going to be an accessory, because it's considered an accessory to the race weapon, which I'll show you where that is in a second. So here's the heart, as I showed you. Okay, make sure you have no UModel export type folder here. Make sure it's deleted. I have an issue where sometimes if the folder is present, I'm unable to export animations. I don't know why, it's just how it is. Alright, that not only took forever, I'm beginning to think that my hard drive is failing on me. Alright, so again, the reason why we deleted that folder, that UModel export folder, is because for whatever reason, in my experiences, if you export the animation when that folder is present, it does not like to export correctly. That's only in my personal experience. It may not be the same with you, but to save you guys some time, make sure that you have no folder, UModel export folder, present in your game directory. So, let's go back into UModel here. So, we're dealing with the race heart here on his weapon. If I can find it, it'll be in accessories, no, models, accessories, and models again, and here's the heart here. So, we're going to want to make sure that we have this mesh, so we would go to Tools, Export, Open Package. Actually, no, sorry, again, we didn't want that. You would want to export the mesh first and drag that folder to the desktop and make sure that this is blank. And then you would want to export the animation file. So like you saw that I did there, I exported the folder and then I would drag that over to the desktop and delete the folder. So that way you don't have that UModel export folder that I was talking to you guys about. So this would be the animation file for it. So it's called, it's usually located under, within the same category. It'll be in an animation folder. And here it is right here, heart loop. So we would export that. And there you go, there's the separate folder for that. And you can just drag it and drop it to the desktop and basically overwrite it into the same folder. So I've already done that here. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like right now in Blender. Alright, so and in Blender, you want to make sure that you have a clean slate. Make sure you don't have any of the cameras and all that other bullshit. We're going to go to File, Import, PSK, and so there's that folder. So I'm going to show you the weapon first here. I'm using a very complicated way of actually doing this, but you know, the more complicated I show you guys, I guess the easier it would be if you did something even easier when it comes to Dead by Daylight models. So here's the model here. The weapon model that doesn't have the heart that sits on the top. If you guys are familiar, there's actually a heart that sits on the top of this skull, and that's why you can kind of see it's hollowed out right here, because that's where the heart would be. So what I like to do, typically I would delete the armature for most weapons for slashers, but I'm actually going to keep the armature in this situation because I may need it for that animation file that I'm telling you guys about. So I keep it just in case that I ever need it. So we'll keep the armature. You can rename all this stuff, so you can rename this to the name of the weapon like I typically do. Just call this right here armature, and I usually call this like mesh or something. And then I rescale this all down to about, personally I like 0.0098 for my slashers. That's the scale that I use for my slashers in any way. Unfortunately, I didn't get the bone either, so let's see if that'll... There we go. I think that worked. Okay, why did that get smaller than it had to be? Let's try this again. See. There we go. I think I got it. Yeah, there we go. It's all lined up perfectly. Okay, and then what I would do is I would just basically file, export, and export this whole thing as an FBX. You could also, the material, make sure that it's all white too. Otherwise, your textures are going to be a little dark. So that's what, at least what I like to do. You can change it in Unity as well, but to have it permanently like that, you can just do that. So, say you already have the weapon, you've already exported it as an FBX. Now let's go ahead and deal with the actual animation shit. So, we're going to go File, New, because we've already gotten this as our FBX, so we don't need this anymore. So, Reload. We're going to delete this, make sure everything's a clean slate again. And then we're going to import our heart mesh. That's going to actually have the animation tied to it. So that'll be located in these folders here, that UModel export folder that we made on the desktop. So here it is. It sits a little high because if you recall, I haven't scaled this down yet, and the weapon actually sits about this high normally. If you recall, like I scaled it down. So we're going to make that smooth. And we don't want to mess with any of these bones at all. We got to keep every single bone here, because if we mess with any of these bones, then it's going to completely break the animation. So we're not going to scale it down yet. Now this is where we're going to import our PSA animation file that we exported. So as you see here, this is our PSA animation file. It would have been located, well, let's just go to the desktop again. So we basically overrid it in our folder here, UModel export folder. I believe it was in weapons, models, accessories, models again, and here's the reference skeleton. It's always going to have a skeleton name and then the PSA. Just literally just find the PSA extension. So there you go, and now we have it imported into Blender. And as you can see here, you can see that it's moving. You can also hit play too, and that's what it looks like. Obviously it's not going to loop, but we're going to show you how to loop it too in Unity to get it to permanently stay that way. So now that we have the animation tied to it, we're going to now scale it down. So click on it and scale it down to also 0.0098. That way it sits properly with the weapon in Unity. But again, we're going to save this as a separate FBX as well. So you can also, again, rename all this stuff. So you can also make sure that this is white. Rename all this shit if you'd like to. You don't have to, but I like to keep clean. I like to keep it nice and tidy. So you would file, export, FBX. But I've already done all this stuff, so let's go ahead and jump into Unity now. Yes, I would like to quit that. We don't also need UModel anymore too, so you can go ahead and click that out. So this is where we get into this fun stuff. So here is the Angel of Music here. I've already rigged him. I haven't gave him any cloth dynamics or anything fancy yet, but here's what he looks like just as is. And I've already made him a folder, so Wraith, Angel of Music. Here's the heart, and here's the weapon itself. How you would do this is you would just import both of these FBXs that I told you to save, you know, the weapon and the heart meshes separate, and I told you to save them as separate FBXs on your desktop. You would just drag them into Unity. So here we have the weapon here, so we're going to drag and drop the weapon into our scene, and then we're going to go ahead and drop the heart as well. And as you can see, it sits properly if we grab both of them at the same time and rotate them to about a 90-degree angle. There you go. And they sit properly with each other. Nothing's out of the ordinary. I've already textured them as well. So now then, we're going to basically get the animation to play in Unity, and we're also going to get it to loop. So let's go ahead and click on our heart here, and we're going to click on animation. And so the animation is already imported. Actually, if we go into animation down here, sorry, I'm fucking up. Go into rig on the heart and go and make sure that this is set to legacy and hit apply. Then we would click on the heart in our scene and make sure you're in animation here. And if you don't have this little window, you would just go into window, should be in window animation, somewhere around there, window animation, and you can just drag and drop it down in here. So what you're going to want to do is copy all these keyframes here, every single keyframe. And to do that, you would just basically click on it, hold down Control on the keyboard and hit A. That way it selects everything here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hit Control C. So you copy every single keyframe here. So we Control C'd it. And then we're going to go back into where our heart is. It doesn't matter where you put this animation file, but for the sake of tidiness, I'm going to keep it in our Wraith Angel Music folder. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to create an animation. And we're going to call it Heartbeat. I put heat beat. Oh man, can't even English today. Heartbeat. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the animation on this, and as you can see, it's blank. So you selected it, hit animation, and now this is where we're going to copy those keyframes. We're going to hit Control V, and that pastes the keyframes into this animation file. Alright, so after that is done, we're going to go back into our heartbeat animation. Make sure that this is set to loop time, so that way that the animation constantly loops. And for the heart, we're going to want to make sure we set this back to generic, since we no longer need the animations for this heart anymore, because we've copied them as I showed you. So now what we're going to do next, we're going to hit create, and we're going to create an animator controller. We're also going to name this heartbeat. And so at the top here you have your animator. If you don't have the animator window, all you have to do is hit window and then animator, and the window will pop up for you. I always have it up here as for a quick reference. So now what we're going to do is go into the animator at the top and make sure that the heartbeat animator is also selected, and we're going to drag and drop our heartbeat animation as a entry, and that's quite literally all you have to do for the heartbeat animator. So if we go back into our scene here and then also into our scene over here, we're going to click on the heart, and then we're going to basically drag and drop the heartbeat into our controller. Now in case that you don't actually have this animator, all you actually have to do is just hit add component and just find it, and that's how you'll have it there. So quite simple. Now all we have to do is play now. So if we play the animation, it should loop for us. And as you can see, it is looping and it is beating constantly as it should. Now, how do we keep this heart attached to the weapon? So as you can see, if we move the weapon around, the heart does not stay with the weapon. So what we're basically going to do, and this applies to the doctor's eyeballs or the doctor's little head needles on the Asylum model. So what you would basically want to do is, for instance, for the doctor models, for the eyeballs, we'll just say the foul bile instance, the eyeballs would have to be set in the head bone. So if we go into our Wraith Angel of Music here, this guy, you would basically drag and drop, say this heart was eyes instead. We would basically drag and drop the eyes into the head bone, and that's how the heart will be attached to the head. So anytime the head moves, the eyeballs will also move in the same position with the head, if that makes sense. So for this weapon, we would basically just drag and drop it into our weapon here, the heart of Miss Smithson, and anytime that this weapon now moves, oh, sorry, wrong one. Anytime that this weapon now moves, the heart will stay within the weapon as well. So, just like our weapon triggers here, let's go ahead and set this into the hand and move it up here. And it should about, I don't know, should be somewhat like that, and then we'll turn it a little bit. And that's probably how you would hold it. Now we're going to drag and drop this weapon into the hand, and in this case it would be the right wrist. So now if we move the wrist around, the wrist will move, or the weapon will move along with the hand. So, and this heart will also keep playing the animation as well. So we can see a instance of that right here. See, it's just constantly beating and it's moving. So in the case of the doctor's eyeballs, it'd be the same thing. So if we hit play and we moved around his head, the eyeballs will play the animation, and his head would also, his eyeballs will also move along with the head if the eyeballs are put into the head bone. And so there you have it, guys. That's pretty much all it is. Hopefully that wasn't too complicated. All credit actually goes to a guy, Mr. Balrog. I've mentioned him in some of my videos, I think, before. He was the one that showed me this, and now I'm just presenting it to you. He showed me, after Legacy was basically obsolete and we could not use it in VRChat, he basically showed me this method, and it works flawlessly. A little bit of a few extra steps, but it works. So all credit goes for him for that. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask me, and I will try to get back to you with as much clarity as possible. Hopefully this video wasn't too lengthy, and hopefully it was very educative. So without further ado, guys, have a good one.